The central nervous system is a bustling network of high-speed neural highways. Right now, millions of sensory signals from the outside world are traveling through your body and rushing up to your brain in a fraction of a millisecond. But if one of those invisible neural wires crosses or disconnects, how exactly does a doctor pinpoint the damage? And how do they do it when the patient is a squirmy, anxious child? The answer lies in a surprisingly lo-fi toolkit. Instead of relying on complex machinery, a pediatric neurologist uses everyday objects: a cotton wisp, a tuning fork, glass tubes of warm and cool water, and a piece of chocolate. To make this work, the doctor transforms the exam into an interactive game governed by a few strict rules. The child has to keep their eyes closed the entire time. The testing always moves from distal to proximal, starting out at the hands and feet and moving inward toward the core, and the doctor always compares the left side of the body directly against the right. Using these specific maneuvers, a doctor can isolate different nerve tracts and verify that sensory signals are reaching the brain without interference. The mapping begins at the surface. To test the body's outermost skin receptors, the doctor gently brushes exposed areas with that wisp of cotton or lightly taps the skin, alternating between the sharp and blunt ends of a safety pin. This diagram illustrates the spinal thalamic tract handling touch, temperature, and pain. When a pin touches skin, a signal jumps to the dorsal root ganglia, hits the spinal cord, relays up the brainstem, through the thalamus, arriving at the parietal lobe sensory cortex. That entire multi-relay journey, hitting 5 distinct biological waypoints, happens every single time you brush against a surface, taking less than a millisecond to complete. Accurately feeling that simple pinprick confirms that the body's primary environmental defense mechanisms are perfectly online. Next, the doctor tests the structural wiring beneath the skin. They press a thumb into a joint to test the feeling of pressure, or place the base of a vibrating tuning fork directly onto a prominent bone. The posterior sensory system manages these signals, relaying information about physical pressure, vibration, and the spatial orientation of joints. This deep pathway provides what we call proprioception. It is the brain's constant, unconscious awareness of exactly where your body parts are in space and how your joints are moving. This animated diagram demonstrates what happens when that proprioceptive system fails. A loss of position sense in the legs leads to a positive Romberg test. Without visual cues, the patient cannot maintain their posture, causing them to lose their balance and fall. Confirming the exact moment a child feels the distinct buzz of a tuning fork ensures the integrity of this hidden inner awareness, the exact wiring that keeps humans physically upright. The final phase of the map evaluates secondary sensations. These are tactile signals that have successfully reached the brain, but now require high-level cortical decoding in the parietal lobe to actually make sense of what they mean. This diagram shows a test called two-point discrimination. On a highly sensitive fingertip, the brain can clearly distinguish 2 separate touches that are just 1 millimeter apart. But down on the top of the foot, those points have to be spread a full 40 millimeters apart before the brain recognizes them as 2 distinct signals instead of 1. The doctor also tests stereognosis. They hand the blindfolded child a familiar object, like a coin, a safety pin, or even a piece of chocolate, and ask them to identify it using only their sense of touch. This requires an immense amount of cognitive processing. The parietal lobe must instantly take the raw tactile data flowing from the fingers and cross-reference it against a massive mental library of visual shapes and textures. Successfully identifying the chocolate ensures the parietal lobe is correctly integrating tactile signals with stored memories of familiar objects. The strict clinical testing wraps up, the blindfold comes off, and the child finally gets to eat the chocolate. In a matter of minutes, the doctor has tested a continuous physical journey, from feeling a tiny wisp of cotton on the skin to instantly decoding a solid shape in the pitch black. This process relies on a biological highway operating with flawless speed. The pediatric sensory exam provides a clinical view into the neural processing that constructs our perception